Good evening. Welcome to the 11th Regulators and Policymakers Retreat being organized by the Independent Power Producers Association of India, New Delhi. We are currently at the Taj Fort Aguada Beach Resort in Goa, where we finished 4.5 days of stimulating sessions on the power, infrastructure, and other social sectors. I'd like to introduce you, our kind viewers, to our guest for this evening, Mr. Gopal Saxena, who is the CEO of BSES Rajdhani. So, welcome to the retreat.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure being here.
Thank you, sir. Sir, the last day of the retreat, namely today, featured a masterclass for regulators where you shared your views as a DISCOM, as a leading DISCOM of Delhi. And as we all know, that yours is perhaps the only story of privatization in the recent few years. And in fact, thereafter, even after Electricity Act 2003 was passed, there was no other privatization. So the people of India would like to know, and indeed abroad, when we go to conferences abroad, what has been the story of privatization? What has been the success that you achieved in the last few years, and how has it been beneficial for the consumer?
Very good question. But what I'd like to do is to first start off with the macroeconomic picture and the need for making the power sector very strong and viable in the context of India's anticipated growth. Now, as we are all aware, we are looking at a GDP growth of about 8 to 10% in the next decade. To be able to achieve that 8 to 10%, I think the conference over here has thrown up the fact that power is one of the most essential things that will need to be augmented. Which means that if we are looking at 8 to 10% GDP growth, power sector must grow at least 10% per annum. Now, if you look at India's generation capacity today, which is about 170,000 megawatt, and then you look at the fact that with an 85% plant load factor, the effective generation capacity available at any point of time is 150,000 megawatts. When we are looking at the Indian context, and we are looking at a installed capacity of about 170,000 megawatts, with an 85% plant load factor, we are looking at an effective availability of 150,000 megawatts. T&D losses running at 28 to 30%. The actual availability of power is of the order of 100,000 megawatts. Now, if that 100,000 megawatts needs to grow at least at 10%, and I do some reverse calculations, we are talking of about 16,000 megawatts to 17,000 megawatts being added every year, assuming that the T&D losses remain 30% or come down at the national level of about half 1%. Now, that's a challenging task, because that entails a whole lot of investments coming into the generation sector primarily, and subsequently into the transmission and distribution sectors. Mind you, with the kind of legacy infrastructure that we have today, where for every 1 crore invested in generation, you are wanting to invest at least 2 crores on transmission and distribution, we are looking at a huge outlay. And frankly, that kind of money does not exist in India. So you've got to create the conditions where people from the developed world, from people from really wealthy countries, will find interest to invest in India. And that interest can only come about if there are success stories, particularly in corporatization and privatization of the sector. The generation sector has seen a lot of activity, but across the whole value chain, the basic revenue is going to come from the distribution sector. And if the distribution sector itself is troubled, then this whole power scenario will collapse.
So there is a genuine fear amongst generators that if the distribution sector is not economically viable, then there is no point having PPAs and all, because that will all go bust in any case.
Definitely. Now, you look at the Delhi example. The need for privatization was felt because losses were running at 52%. There was infrastructure which just could not stand up to the load requirements, and imposed on it a set of conditions that the privatization would bring about substantial operational benefits in the interest of the consumers, as also substantial financial benefits so as to lessen the state burden. Those objectives have clearly been met in the last 9 years. The overall loss reduction in Delhi has been from 52%, we are today at about 16%, and hopefully in a couple of years' time we will be around 13-14%, which given the size and breadth of Delhi would be a phenomenal achievement. Within this is the story where in different parts of Delhi, which are comparable to large towns, losses are as low as 6 to 7%, which compares with the best in the world today. So that's one part of it. The second part is that simultaneous to the loss reduction, the standard of supply, the quality of supply has improved immeasurably. You yourself were reminiscing about how, not reminiscing, rather you yourself were talking about how in 2002 there were 8-10 hour power cuts, transformer failures were rampant, and if a transformer failed, it could take anywhere from 16 hours to 1 day for a transformer to be repaired or replaced. All those days are a matter of history. I wouldn't think of anybody in Delhi saying that today there are any outages. Today there may be, because of the infrastructure that we have, certain breakdowns, but there has been no transformer failure, and Delhi virtually is 24/7 availability. There are no power cuts. Power has been arranged. The standard of supply is very good. All those issues of low voltages, etc., are a thing of the past. So the consumers never had it that good. The third point, which is of great relevance to the consumer, is the fact that there has been a phenomenal effort as well as success in responding to consumer needs. There are more than 5,000 bill payment outlets. There is a customer care center at virtually every nook and corner. But more than anything else, we've infused technology to such a level that all those problems of the past, provisional billing, bill amendments, mistakes in billing, mistakes in calculation, are a thing of the past. We probably have one of the finest technological deployments in the network across the country, possibly in comparison to some parts of the most developed regions of the world.
Right.